So, welcome. I want to talk briefly today about trumpets in the Bible, because that makes an awful lot of sense, doesn't it, on a service like this. There is going to be the opportunity to make some noise. That is not a continuous noise all the time I'm talking. That is a noise at the appropriate time. Got that? Yeah. Youngsters, you happy with that? Good. So, I wanted to talk about trumpets. I wanted to look at trumpets in the Bible. And I went and looked online to see how much a trumpet was. I thought, there's no way the trustees are going to pay for that. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to give everybody a trumpet? They're definitely not going to pay for that. So I was working my way through what we could do. And I've got these. There is easily one each. So pass those out, but please don't blow them yet. Well, they'll go round. They'll go round. Right. I've also brought one with me, which is, it's a little bit different. Now, I can't play this very well, okay? I do have a mouthpiece which allows me to cheat, but the tone changes considerably. So I'm going to try and blow this. Let's see if it works. And see, it's not very good with that one. Let's try that. That's better, isn't it? So, that is the shofar. When the Bible talks about trumpets, this is what it's talking about. Okay? It's not the brass instrument with the keys on it. That's quite a modern thing. How are we doing? How far round have the blowers got? Right.
It's a bit of a different shofar, Mark. Yeah.
I'll talk to the trustees. I would have bought everybody a proper trumpet. So, let me find my first scripture. So, I said there'll be opportunity to make a noise. Whenever I say the word trumpet, you can blow that, okay? Is that we happy with that? So, we're going to talk about trumpet. Whenever I say trumpet. Fantastic. So, one of my favourite scriptures. Oh, we're going to talk, let's talk a little bit more. There are roughly 3 sorts of times in the Bible where the Bible talks about trumpets. It talks about them in the context of warnings. I didn't say it then. It talks about it in the context of celebration and music. And it talks about trumpets. In the context of proclamation and activation. Okay? And I'm going to group the celebration and activation bits together. So first of all, warnings. Joel 2. It's a book in the Old Testament, and it starts like this. Blow the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming. The trumpet was used as a warning. There would be somebody standing on the city walls looking for danger. And if they saw danger, they would blow the trumpet. It was an alarm, and it worked. Who was it a warning to, though? It was a warning to the Hebrews, the Israelites, God's chosen people. It wasn't a warning to the entire world. It was very specifically for this people. And it was a way of going, wake up!
Yeah.
See what's going on. Look around you and see what's happening. Recognize what is happening. It was really important. And there were prophets as well at that time. People that were hearing from God, and they were warning the people about what was going on. They were like a spiritual trumpet. Their job was to warn people when they were going away from God. Their job was to warn people that what they were doing wasn't right. But we are not Old Testament people, are we? We live after Jesus in a new covenant and a new way of living. And it'd be interesting. Wonder what these Old Testament prophets would be like in this new covenant. Well, the Bible actually tells us. In the book of Malachi, right, I'll tell you what, let's just read it. Malachi 4, 5 and 6, that is Romans. That's not going to help me. Malachi 4, 5 and 6. Behold, I send you Elijah. Now, Elijah was an Old Testament prophet. He challenged the priests that were worshipping false gods. He challenged them. He beat them. He was full-on Old Testament prophet. He was one of the classic alarm trumpets given to Israel. Behold, I will send you Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. That's end of time, so it's in the New Testament. And he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the father. In this new covenant, the time that we live in, the Old Testament prophet is about reconciliation. He no longer is sounding the alarm. He is actually reconciling God and us to God. The heart of the Father to the sons and daughters, the hearts of the sons and daughters to God. So that's the first bit, the warning trumpet. But let's look at the other opportunities. Let's look at worship and music. So in one of Floss's favourite scriptures, 2 Chronicles, chapter 5, verses 13 and 14. It came to pass that the trumpeters and the singers were as one, to make one sound to be heard in praising and thanking the Lord. And when they lifted up their voices with the trumpets and the cymbals and instruments of music, and praised the Lord, saying, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. That the house of the Lord was filled with a cloud, so that the priests could no longer continue to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of God filled the house. Whoa!
We want it now.
Oh yeah. In the book of Revelation, we also see angels blowing trumpets. And when they blow these trumpets, we actually see things happening in the heavenlies. There is power in the proclamation that the angels are making. When we worship, when we celebrate, when we blow the trumpet, things happen in the heavenlies. And I can't quite explain it, but there is power. There is a real power in that worship and that declaration. We see it in the Chronicles passage, where the worship, the music, the cymbals, and there was another instrument. Trumpet, that was it. And it was lifted up, that noise, that worship, and something happened in the heavenlies. And God went, I am coming down and I am joining in with this in a very real way. But it leads to the question, if it's about celebration and moving things in the heavenlies, what is it we have to celebrate? Well, coming up is Easter. And you're going to hear more about Easter and the story, and we're going to be celebrating that. We are going to have a Good Friday service where we can reflect, and we're going to do, what people would expect over Easter, but we're going to hear a lot more about Jesus. Easter was a time of death and of resurrection. The death and resurrection of a bloke called Jesus. And that is central to everything that Christians believe and everything that Christianity stands for. I'll tell you what it means to me. I absolutely know that I was created to be in relationship with God. I know that mankind was created to be in relationship with God. But God gave us free will. God gave us the opportunity to decide what we wanted to do with our lives, which steps we wanted to take. And that free will led to mankind separating itself from God. And ever since then, people have chosen to follow God or walk away from God. And that has continued. And that separation is not just a physical distance. It becomes a blockage that you can't step back through on your own. We do things wrong. We don't follow God's desires. And we end up separated from God. The Bible uses a word called sin to describe that separation and the things that we have done wrong. And I know that I was separated from God. Now, I was a good bloke. I really was. I had a lovely family. I was brought up properly, but I knew that I was still separated from God. That I came to a point where I realised there was that separation. Rule following does not get you back into relationship. The whole of the Old Testament is about the Jewish nation, the Hebrews, the Israelites, whatever, trying to follow the rules to get back into relationship. And it's full of prophets like Elijah blowing the trumpet and warning them that they were going wrong. They had to constantly be told that they were doing things wrong. Following the rules doesn't work. Just being good doesn't get you into a relationship with God. God needed to bridge that gap himself. Jesus is God. Jesus came to earth, fully human and fully God. We celebrate the birth of Jesus at Christmas. A baby, a real baby, born. But fully God as well. And then at Easter, He lives his life. He teaches. He did wonderful teachings recorded in the Bible. I am glossing over so much. And at Easter, Jesus was nailed to a cross and he died. But it was that death that actually fulfilled the law, fulfilled the rules, actually completed all the requirements of the law. And as a Christian, you can be with Jesus. You can, in the Spirit, through an incredible link that God allows us, you can take your sin, the things that you have done wrong, you can give them to Jesus, and Jesus says, he didn't just die for his sins because he had none. He hadn't done anything wrong. But he died and took everybody's sin that wants to actually say, yes, Jesus. He took it. And he died. And he took our wrongdoing into the grave with him. Into death. And 3 days later, he walked out of that tomb and left our rubbish behind. So, yes, celebrate that. We can now know life in relationship with God because of what Jesus has done. It's down to us. It really is. When I said we can't do anything to bring ourselves back into relationship, that's not strictly true. There is one thing that we can do. We can turn to Jesus and say, I'm sorry, God. I am sorry that I have been separated from you. I want to be in relationship with you. I want the heart of the Father and the heart of the Son to come together. And God will throw open his arms, hug you, and bring you into his family. You don't just scrape in. You don't just qualify as the lowest of the low. You become an heir with Jesus. You become the same in heaven. You are just in the heavenlies with God as a beloved son or daughter. And I think that is worth celebrating. Absolutely worth celebrating. But it's a choice. Many of us, we heard Kathy today, she chose. I chose. I know many of you have chosen to turn to God. I would encourage you today, if you've not done that you too take this opportunity to choose God. And if you're not sure what that means, come and talk to me afterwards, Barbara, or anybody here, maybe the person that brought you. Ask them what that means, and we'll tell you. And we've got a baptism coming up in it's a few weeks' time. We might also get some baptisms as well. We'll baptise people. I'm looking forward to that. That is an outward sign of something that's gone on inside. So you can choose. You can choose yes or you can choose no. As for me and my household, we are going to follow the Lord. That is what I celebrate. That is why we can blow the trumpet. And that is why we're going to finish this service today with some celebration.